the Republicans have done a really good job of projecting that on Democrats. Like you hear a lot of rhetoric, whether it's right or wrong, whether there's data to back it or not, who knows? But they've done a really good job of going, hey, look at California. Look how California looks. Look at these cities. They spent this much on homeless people, and there are even more of them that are homeless. Right. And look at San Francisco, look what's happening, people moving out of the city, et cetera. And I think they've done a really good job of marketing the perceived failures of Democrats in these states. How do you as a Democrat change that perception while not gaslighting the people who live there that do feel like their cities have I don't want to say have become ruined, but have definitely like decreased the standard of living.
Yeah, so I think first of all, you have to acknowledge why people are skeptical. And I do think that's, I mean, look, anybody who's been in a relationship knows that like if somebody's upset or pissed, like you don't start and say like, you should feel better than you do actually. Here's why you're wrong to be upset, right? Like we can't be caught doing that. We are rightly proud. Is it easier
doing that with a dude?
No, it's the same.
Really?
Yeah.
No. Fuck. This whole time I was like, man, at least you could be like, you're wrong, bro. And they'd be like, yeah, it was.
No, I'm sorry. My side's got a lot to offer, but it's that part. That part's the same.
There's no loopholes in relationships.
Damn. Okay, please continue.
Where was I? So part of it's, kind of that approach. Part of it is to demonstrate the things that are going well or that can be done well. So we talk about crime, right, in cities. And you would think if you watch like the Republicans that like every city is a like hellhole of crime. Now, if we respond and we're like, what crime? Then like obviously when you got like people getting pushed into the subway and you've got carjackings up, it's going to sound like we're just making shit up. If on the other hand we point to the fact that like Boston is at something like a 70-year low in the murder rate there. Or we point to the achievements in Denver under their mayor there about tackling some of the hardest problems in the world, like homelessness and housing. And having lived that as a mayor in a largely low-income community, like that is one of the hardest things that people working in government can ever try to solve, right? And there are people who are doing it well, and most of those people, in my experience, are Democrats. Now, they may not be like Washington Democrats or like federal, like congressional part of our party, but because I think the folks who are saying like government got this wrong, which might be true any number of times, what they're really saying is like the policies of this person in government got it wrong, but they don't have an answer. Their answer is burn it all down, right? If we haven't solved poverty, their answer is we're going to slash Medicaid, which is what the Republican budget moving through Congress right now will do, is slash Medicaid. Medicaid may not be perfect. In fact, I know for a fact, like many issues come up in the way it's administered, the way people have access to it. But I also know for a fact that if your answer to that is just to cut out a bunch of poor people, or VA, like any veteran can tell you, the horror stories of all the times things didn't go right in dealing with the VA. But if you think the answer is to just cut it or privatize it, that's not an answer. Right. Like, we can do better than that. And I think my party's job is to make clear what that looks like and how we would do it better.
Yeah. How would you do it?
Well, I would follow the lead of some of these mayors we're talking about who are solving some of these problems in a more localized area. City governments that make systems work better in ways that complicated federal systems like Social Security or like VA.
I mean, how would you get the messaging out? How would you help people realize good things are actually happening?
We had Mayor Adams on, and we brought up the subway system and the perception that it's incredibly dangerous right now.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's the safest it's been in X amount of years. He gave examples for, crimes being down. Now, there's other ways to like fudge these crime numbers. If you're not, what is the word where you actually punish people for the crime? If you're not prosecuting crimes, I guess you could say that these crimes didn't happen. So then all of a sudden it looks like crimes are down. So I think there are ways of fudging numbers.
Yeah, I mean, usually those numbers are based on arrests more than prosecutions, but I hear it.
He was giving me crime statistics, not arrest statistics, but sure. But still, he came and he gave me this data, or he gave us this data, and then we were kind of shocked. We were like, oh, I thought the subway was dangerous again.
Well, there's that perception and reality thing. I mean, back again to aviation, right? So a lot of folks are nervous flyers, don't know if it's safe to fly. Meanwhile, like I said, there was this horrible crash in January, but America went 15 years without a fatal commercial airline crash. Meanwhile, like the number of people who are going to die today in car crashes is basically the same as the number of people you can fit into a 737. And yet most of us,
every day,
every single day, 40,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
Same as gun violence, roughly.
Wow.
And yet most people feel safer when they get in a car.
Yeah.
Especially if they're the ones driving.
You're on the ground. You have some level of control.
Yeah. But the
Going at a
reality
lower
is
speed.
your life is in way more danger.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So then it's kind of a psychology question. Like, how do you find people where they are? You don't want to blow off those fears, but you do want to reach people with real data and real numbers and information that is real. And the thing that really scares me about the moment we're in is it's harder and harder for everybody to have access to the same facts. It's one thing for, like, I grew up in a world where you watch TV, you got your news from TV, which is like antique from what I can tell talking to students now. But you would watch a TV show and maybe that TV show, that network didn't do it perfectly. But generally what they would try to do is they would cover an issue, whatever it was, abortion, taxes, some bill moving through Congress, and they would have the Republican saying Republican things and the Democrat saying Democratic things, and you would think about it. And watching that, like, often hearing the other side would just make you feel what you believed even stronger because you'd be thinking of your own counter arguments. And other times something the other side said would actually get through to you. But the point is you would think about it. And you would have to contend with what other people had to say. And while there were different opinions going around based on different values, they tended to be in an argument that was over the same facts. Now, we don't even have the same facts.
Yeah.
And that is a massive, massive problem.
Trusting statistics, like for me personally, I have an issue with like data in that regard. Because like what's the saying? Like you can torture the numbers; they'll tell you anything you want. You know, like it's difficult because every side has different data interpretations to support their idea.
And now they're just making up stuff.
Yeah, and like a lack of public trust, I think, is probably one of the largest issues I think in American politics is that
Absolutely.
you can't trust the data, you can't trust the politicians. I think that's the general feeling. And I think even like congressional stock trading is like a major issue with this.
Yeah.
I'm curious your opinion on like private holdings for publicly elected officials when it comes to the stock market. And I think that is one of the main things that is eroding the public trust in politicians.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real problem, and I think they should get rid of it. I mean, this was not a problem for me because I didn't have a lot of wealth. Look, I get it. If I was a millionaire, I'm sure I would like think twice before taking a public service job if that meant having to divest. But like, we're talking about people who are sometimes responsible for like multi-billion-dollar decisions, or in terms of like the course of the national economy, like trillion-dollar level outcomes, right? And if they think even for a second about like, oh, what's this going to do to my stock in Google or whatever, that's a problem, right? And, that coupled with, and this is less politically popular, but I also think a lot of public servants don't get paid enough. And I would go to bat for them getting paid, maybe not the same as the private sector. Like, I get that that's never going to be the same, but I do think that they need to be compensated well enough that they don't have to swallow quite as hard before deciding.
You have to incentivize the best and brightest to do the most important jobs.
Yeah.
I think it goes for cops,
and again,
doctors,
ideally
teachers,
reward the ones
everything.
who are
politicians,
best.
but you can't trade stock to make up for the difference. I think.
But I think it's interesting what you said. Like, people feel like they can't trust the data, they can't trust the politicians. Like, I think those two things are linked because actually the data, it's actually very, very rare for data to be put out that is objectively false. They can happen. Like, usually, like the data are like based on some real set of data somebody gathered.
But it can be manipulated.
But how it looks or how you make it sound. I mean, they're doing this right now. Again, the Doge stuff, they make it sound like there's like millions of dead people getting Social Security.
Exactly.
We're just not. That is just not true.
So how many are there dead people? That's because this seemed to me fact.
Well, first of all, like
Biden can get it.
Look, I mean, one thing to think about is like, obviously the vast majority of people who die of old age are getting Social Security the day they die, right? So like for at least a minute or a week or a month or however long it takes, right? There's that process of updating. But part of it had to do with how the database was built. And you just didn't necessarily like remove everybody from the database. It didn't mean they were getting money, but it meant they were in the database. And so you could twist that into looking like this is what the president did in his speech. Like, it's true there's this database that had all these people from like, 100 years ago. It was not true that they were getting checks, okay?
Wow.
But he said the one part.
That's good.
And your brain fills in the blanks. And now you think, oh shit, there's like millions of people who are 150 years old getting checks, which is not true. So, but the real thing is we don't trust the people who are supposed to be interpreting the data. And that is like a societal problem. It's not just politicians, right? It's an erosion of trust in every institution where somebody is supposed to help us make sense of this. And I come out of the local, right, where we're a little more connected to reality because if Like if the roads are in shitty condition and I'm the mayor and I can produce some statistics saying that the roads are great, people can call me out and say, no, they're not. Like I drive on these roads all the time and they're not.
And they're going to
just
see
not,
you
right?
at the supermarket.
And they will find me and they will tell me what they think of the condition of our roads, right? You get up to the national level and you're so removed from that you start to get into these like alternate reality zones. And then you add to that the fragmentation of where people get their information, because there isn't the, you know, the famous example is Walter Cronkite, right? Like everybody in the 60s like turns on Walter Cronkite, and it's not so much that he told people what to think, it's that he laid out a certain set of facts, certain set of things that happened. And everybody, they could argue over what it means, but they would generally agree on what just happened.
Right. Right.
And we don't even have that.
Yeah, we're in the echo chambers, and the algorithms are just making those echo chambers more extreme.
So the algorithms are even worse. I mean, the other problem I would say is like, we no longer have the access to the editorial function, by which I mean like a professional news organization. I used to get so mad at from the South Bend Tribune to the New York Times. There were times when I was so pissed over a story or framing or whatever. But I will say, if I actually found that they got something actually factually wrong and showed it, they would correct it. Like there is that ethos.
Now there is no.
And you know, like professional journalistic organizations have to do that. But if we're in a world where somebody weights like what some dude on the internet says the same as a organization where there are people who have to hold to journalistic standards, if that's the same, well, that dude on the internet doesn't have to issue a correction. He doesn't even have to reveal like who he is, right? I think there's a lot of people looking at their feeds, and those two things seem equal.
Also, go. The algorithm is going to reward the more salacious version of that information.
Yes, it rewards the lizard brain.
Yes.
Because your lizard brain is taught. You see, the thing we don't realize is every time we click on something, look at something, let alone like something or share something, or I don't know, I'm still talking in Twitter terms like an old man, but like whatever the kids are doing these days, you are actually making a statement about your editorial preferences. You're not intentionally doing it. You're not
They
saying
know us
like,
better than we know ourselves.
give me more. But to me, it's not just how they know us. It's we all have different levels. There's like what we want and what we want to want.
Okay.
There's what we think is important.
This is why TikTok works better than Instagram.
How do you mean?
Because TikTok is what we actually want. And Instagram is what we want to want. We follow all these people. We think we want information about what's going on in the world. But TikTok is like, motherfucker, I know what you want. Just shut up, sit down, and scroll. And that's why we watch more TikTok. And Instagram's trying to compete. But the reality is we don't want to look at all the people we follow.
But also because like both of those things are true. Like both of those are us, right? The me that clicks on the stupid bullshit because it's funny is the same me as the one who, if you just sat me down and said, okay, if I want to allocate like what topics are covered in the hour I'm going to spend online today, would like try to like choose the more high-minded stuff, right? They're both us. They're both real.
Yes.
But the algorithm is empowering the lizard brain. Over the actual, like the citizen brain.
It's less cognitive effort. It's more cognitive effort to think about what you want to consume that day and put some work into it. Way less to just scroll.
Even though if it makes you better off in the same way that like reading a good book might actually at the end of the
enhance
time you read it, like make you better, like make you feel better even.